What if England's legendary Virgin Queen wasn't a woman at all? A strange tale from a quiet village claims Queen Elizabeth I was actually a red-haired boy in disguise. Is it pure fiction or a buried royal secret? Let's explore one of history's most bizarre conspiracy theories. Was Queen Elizabeth actually a man in disguise? The reign of Queen Elizabeth I is widely hailed as a golden era in English history, an age marked by remarkable artistic achievements, religious evolution, and the early stirrings of a global empire. Known as the Virgin Queen, Elizabeth ruled for 45 years with a fierce intellect, unshakable resolve, and political savvy that made her one of the most revered monarchs in British history. But hidden among the triumphs and transformations of the Elizabethan era is one of the strangest legends to ever emerge from the annals of conspiracy: the theory that Queen Elizabeth I was not a woman at all, but a man masquerading as the royal heiress. This bizarre claim, known as the Bisley Boy legend, is more historical fiction than fact. Yet, like many enduring conspiracy theories, it refuses to vanish. Let's dive into the murky origins of this story, the figures who gave it life, and why historians universally regard it as an elaborate myth rather than a hidden truth. The curious tale of the Bisley Boy. The roots of the Bisley Boy legend stretch back to the early 20th century, when it was popularized by an unlikely source, Bram Stoker, the celebrated author of Dracula. In 1910, Stoker published a lesser-known book titled Famous Impostors, in which he recounted an eerie tale he claimed to have discovered in the English village of Bisley, Gloucestershire. According to the story, the young Princess Elizabeth was sent to Bisley during a plague outbreak in London. Tragically, the child was said to have died there, an event that, if revealed, could have triggered the wrath of her notoriously volatile father, King Henry VIII. In a panic, her guardians allegedly substituted a local red-haired boy to take her place. This child, the theory goes, would grow up to become Queen Elizabeth I, successfully deceiving everyone for decades and ascending the throne under false pretenses. Stoker claimed that local traditions and village gossip supported this tale. He even cited a coffin supposedly discovered in Bisley, containing the remains of a young girl dressed in regal Tudor attire, suggesting, in his view, that the real Elizabeth had died young. The claims behind the legend. Supporters of the Bisley Boy theory have pointed to a variety of peculiarities in Elizabeth's life to support their claim. They often highlight her refusal to marry, her determination to remain the Virgin Queen, and her supposed reluctance to undergo medical examinations, even from her own physicians. To some, these elements hint at a deeply buried secret. Fringe authors and conspiracy theorists have latched onto the theory over the years, weaving it into a broader tapestry of historical skepticism. Some even argue that Elizabeth's famously commanding demeanor, sharp wit, and androgynous appearance point to a hidden male identity concealed beneath royal gowns and elaborate wigs. One name often invoked is Richard J. King, whose fringe literature explores the legend in obsessive detail, analyzing portraits, anecdotes, and Elizabeth's behavior through the lens of this conspiracy. But how credible is this theory when held up to the light of historical scrutiny? A royal rubbish. Almost without exception, professional historians reject the Bisley Boy theory as a complete fabrication. Acclaimed historian Alison Weir, in her biography, The Life of Elizabeth I, points out the sheer improbability of such an enormous deception being carried out, let alone maintained, for an entire lifetime. Elizabeth's existence was one of intense and constant surveillance. From the moment she was born, her life was observed, documented, and managed by tutors, noblewomen, foreign envoys, and a rotating cast of court officials. The idea that all of them could be fooled or complicit in a lie of this magnitude strains belief. Weir also emphasizes that Elizabeth's every move, especially as queen, was performed on a very public stage. Maintaining a royal identity, especially in such a politically fraught era, would have been nearly impossible for a substitute, let alone a child raised under such secretive conditions. John Guy, in his book Elizabeth: The Forgotten Years, adds another layer to the argument. He delves into Elizabeth's remarkable intellect, noting her fluency in multiple languages, mastery of classical texts, and deftness in international diplomacy. The Queen corresponded with rulers and scholars across Europe, debated with theologians, and issued complex political edicts. Such depth of knowledge and skill could not have been acquired overnight or faked by someone with no legitimate claim to her upbringing. David Starkey in Elizabeth Apprenticeship covers Elizabeth's early years in vivid detail, including her time in the household of her stepmother, Catherine Parr. The records of her education, letters, and physical presence at court are extensive and thoroughly inconsistent with the idea of a sudden, secret replacement. The portraits and the public image. Elizabeth was perhaps the most image-conscious monarch of her time. Hundreds of portraits were commissioned during her reign, and each had to meet strict guidelines set by the crown. Far from being generic idealizations, these artworks had to reflect the Queen's carefully cultivated image, one that balanced femininity with regal authority. Historian Susan Doran, in Elizabeth I and Her Circle, explores how Elizabeth's portraits were a central part of her public identity. While she certainly presented herself as the semi-divine Virgin Queen, there's no indication that she ever attempted to hide her biological sex. The portraits show a woman in full control of her image, not someone disguising a fundamental truth. What about the coffin in Bisley? Much of the Bisley Boy legend hinges on the story of a mysterious coffin discovered in the village, one that supposedly contained a girl's body in royal garb. But no official records exist of such a find, and the tale relies entirely on local lore and second-hand accounts. Even if such a coffin were discovered, it would not constitute proof of Elizabeth's death or replacement, especially without corroborating forensic evidence. Elizabeth I's actual burial place is well known. She was laid to rest in Westminster Abbey in 1603 beside her half-sister, Mary the I. Their joint tomb remains one of the most visited sites in the abbey. Her funeral was a massive public event, attended by nobles, clergy, and commoners alike. No reputable historian has ever found credible evidence to suggest her body was secretly swapped or hidden. Why the legend persists? If the story is so easily debunked, why does it endure? Part of the appeal lies in its strangeness. The Bisley Boy legend functions like a historical ghost story, one that blends royal intrigue, hidden identities, and macabre discoveries. It invites readers to question the surface of history, to peer behind the velvet curtains of royal power and imagine a darker truth lurking beneath. But it also reflects something deeper, society's long-standing discomfort with powerful women. Elizabeth I defied nearly every expectation placed on women in her time. She remained unmarried, ruled alone, and projected strength and autonomy in an era when female rulers were often seen as anomalies. To some, this was so unimaginable that they felt compelled to create a more believable explanation, even one as absurd as the Bisley Boy theory. The legend says less about Elizabeth herself and more about the anxieties of later generations, about gender, authority, and the nature of political power. Truth is stranger and greater than fiction. The historical record is clear. Queen Elizabeth II was no imposter. She was a woman who ruled with vision, charisma, and intellectual brilliance. The Bisley Boy theory, while a fascinating curiosity, collapses under even moderate historical scrutiny. Yet like many conspiracy theories, it lingers, not because it's true, but because it taps into our love for the mysterious and the unbelievable. In the end, the real Elizabeth was far more extraordinary than any fictional substitute could ever have been. Her story doesn't need embellishment. It stands as a testament to what one determined woman could achieve in a world ruled by men. If you enjoyed diving into one of history's strangest royal legends, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment with your thoughts on the Bisley Boy theory, and subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries, myths, and truths of the past.